Right now you might feel like life has become one long uphill climb. Each morning begins with a flood of notifications, deadlines, and responsibilities. And by the time night falls, your mind is still racing as if the day never ended. It can feel like no matter how hard you push, peace is always slipping just out of reach. If this sounds familiar, stay with me, because what you are about to hear is not another quick fix or passing trend. It is a way of living that has guided people for more than 2,000 years. The secret is simple, yet powerful enough to change the way you experience every moment. Zen masters and Buddhist teachers discovered that the real source of stress is not life itself, but our resistance to it. When you fight the current, you exhaust yourself. When you learn to flow with it, you begin to find an ease that does not depend on perfect circumstances. Imagine carrying that kind of freedom into your own life. Think about the last time you tried to control everything around you. Perhaps it was at work, where you felt the weight of impossible expectations. Or maybe it was at home, where you wanted everything to run smoothly but ended up feeling drained. The harder you pushed, the more frustrated you became. Now imagine for a moment what it would feel like to set that heavy burden down, to breathe deeply without needing to force anything, to allow life itself to support you rather than fighting every moment. This is not just a dream. It is the reality taught by the Buddha and practiced by generations of people who once stood exactly where you stand today. They were tired, anxious, and overwhelmed, searching for answers in a world that never seemed to slow down. Through stories, teachings, and simple practices, they discovered a truth that feels as urgent today as it did centuries ago. Nothing stays the same. Not your stress, not your problems, not even the pain you believe will never leave. Everything moves, everything changes, and within that change lies the possibility of peace. Over the next part of this journey, you will hear ancient stories of butchers, monks, merchants, and mothers who all learned how to live with grace in the middle of chaos. These are not distant myths meant only for scholars. They are mirrors held up to your own life, showing you what it means to breathe, to pause, and to flow. So I invite you to make yourself comfortable. Take a deep breath and let your body settle. As you exhale, notice how even this single breath has already shifted you. You have begun the practice without even trying. Stay with me, because the steps that follow will show you how to carry this ease into your daily life. The journey begins now, and it begins with you. The nature of flow. There is a reason so many people in our modern world feel like they are always swimming upstream. From the moment you open your eyes in the morning, you may feel an invisible pressure pushing you to do more, prove more, and conquer more. You have been taught that life is a mountain to climb, a challenge to conquer, a series of goals to chase. The culture around you reinforces this message every day. Success is measured by how hard you push, how much you endure, and how many battles you win. Yet beneath that constant striving, there is a quiet exhaustion that never seems to leave. The ancient wisdom of Buddhism offers a radically different perspective. It teaches that the exhaustion is not caused by life itself, but by the way we resist the natural flow of life. The current is always moving, but instead of learning to move with it, we often thrash against it, wasting our energy and losing our peace. Flow, as understood by Zen masters, is the art of moving with what is instead of against it. It is not passive resignation. It is not giving up on your dreams. It is the graceful recognition that life has rhythms, seasons, and openings that can carry you forward if you learn to trust them. One of the most famous stories in Zen tradition comes from ancient China. A master observed a butcher at work and was astonished. After 19 years of cutting meat, the butcher's knife was still as sharp as the day it was forged. Curious, the master asked him how this could be possible. The butcher smiled and explained that he never forced his blade through the bone. Instead, he looked for the spaces between and let his knife move naturally through them. This simple observation reveals the essence of flow. Life has spaces between. Instead of cutting against resistance, we can learn to move through the natural openings that already exist. Think about your daily life. How often do you feel as though you are cutting against bone, forcing your way through obstacles with sheer willpower? Perhaps at work you stay late night after night, convinced that grinding harder will eventually lead to peace. Or in your personal life, you might cling to a relationship or a role that no longer feels alive, believing that forcing it to continue is the only option. These are examples of living without flow. The result is always the same: fatigue. frustration, a sense of futility that grows heavier with time. Now imagine another way. Imagine approaching life like the butcher with the sharp knife. Instead of forcing outcomes, you learn to notice where the spaces are. A conversation that felt impossible yesterday might open naturally today. A project at work that felt stuck might reveal a small opportunity when you stop trying to control every detail. Flow is not about abandoning effort. It is about shifting the kind of effort you use. Instead of struggling against what is immovable, you align yourself with what is already moving. The Buddha described this principle more than 2,000 years ago. He observed that suffering arises not from life itself, but from our resistance to it. Every time we tense against reality, we add an unnecessary layer of pain. When you resist what is, you create friction. When you soften into what is, you discover ease. Flow is this softening. It is the willingness to let go of the illusion that you must control every moment. It is the courage to allow life to unfold and to work with it rather than against it. You can see this clearly in something as simple as breathing. Your body breathes naturally without your conscious control. The inhale arrives, the exhale follows, and life sustains itself. If you tried to micromanage every breath, you would quickly collapse from exhaustion. Yet this is how many of us treat our daily lives. We micromanage every outcome, every detail, every possible scenario, believing that control will give us safety. In truth, it only makes us weary. Flow invites us to remember that much of life is already happening without our interference. The same intelligence that keeps your heart beating and your lungs expanding can also guide the course of your days if you learn to trust it. Let us bring this down to a more practical level. Consider your work. In Western culture, there is a deep-rooted belief that success comes only through constant effort, long hours, and relentless competition. But studies of creativity and performance have shown that breakthroughs rarely happen under intense pressure. They occur in moments of openness, when the mind is relaxed enough to see patterns and connections. This is why some of your best ideas arrive in the shower, on a walk, or during a quiet evening when you least expect them. Those are moments of flow when you are not forcing solutions but allowing them to emerge. The same is true in relationships. Think about the times when you have tried to control another person's feelings or force a certain outcome in a conversation. The harder you pushed, the more tension arose. Now remember a moment when you truly listened, when you allowed the other person to speak without judgment, when you responded naturally instead of rehearsing what to say. In those moments, the relationship softened. There was connection, trust, and ease. That is flow at work. Flow does not mean abandoning effort. The sailor still steers the boat. But instead of fighting the wind, the sailor learns to use it. Flow means recognizing the direction life is already moving and aligning yourself with it. Imagine the energy you could save if you stopped battling every current and instead let the river carry you forward. This perspective may feel challenging in a culture that glorifies control. We are rewarded for pushing harder, for staying longer, for holding on tighter. To embrace flow requires courage. It means letting go of the illusion that you alone must carry the weight of the world. It means trusting that life is intelligent and that when you stop forcing, solutions often appear on their own. Here is a simple practice to help you experience flow in your daily life. The next time you face a difficult situation, pause for a moment. Instead of asking, "How can I force this to happen?" ask, "Where is the space here?" Notice where there is openness rather than resistance. It might be a person willing to listen. It might be a small step forward instead of a giant leap. It might be the decision to rest and wait for clarity instead of rushing ahead blindly. Over time, this habit of looking for the space will begin to change how you move through life. One of the hidden gifts of flow is that it restores your energy. Think of how tired you feel when you fight everything. Now imagine a life where your actions emerge with the same natural ease as breathing. The energy you save can be invested in what truly matters. Instead of burning out, you begin to thrive. In many ways, flow is about trust. Trust that life has rhythms. Trust that not every burden must be carried by you alone. Trust that letting go of control does not mean losing everything, but often means gaining peace. This trust is not naive. It is grounded in reality. The truth is that you cannot control everything. The economy shifts, relationships evolve, health changes, and circumstances rise and fall beyond your will. Flow is the wisdom of aligning with this reality. instead of denying it. The modern world often encourages us to fight harder, run faster, and push further. Flow reminds us that peace is not found at the end of endless striving. It is found in the simple act of letting life move through you. When you begin to live in flow, your relationships deepen, your creativity blossoms, your health improves, and your mind settles. You discover that ease is not the absence of effort, but the presence of alignment. Picture yourself standing in a river. If you fight the current, you grow tired and frustrated. If you surrender completely, you may be swept away. Flow is neither of these extremes. Flow is learning how to move with the current while staying balanced. You walk steadily, using the force of the water to guide you rather than resisting it. In this way, life becomes less of a battle and more of a dance. As you reflect on your own life, ask yourself where you are currently cutting against bone. Is it in your work where you force yourself to grind even when you are exhausted? Is it in a relationship where you cling to control? Is it in your inner world where you criticize yourself endlessly for not being enough? Now imagine what it would mean to find the spaces between, to let the knife glide through effortlessly. Imagine the relief of moving with life instead of against it. This is the invitation of flow, to stop fighting every moment and start noticing the spaces. To recognize that peace is not something you earn through struggle, but something that emerges when you release control. The Buddha taught that the most powerful actions come from stillness. Flow is the practice of finding that stillness within action. As you continue this journey, hold this thought in your mind. Life is not meant to be conquered. Life is meant to be lived. The river is already moving. The wind is already blowing. Your breath is already flowing. All that is required is the willingness to join the movement instead of resisting it. This is the beginning of freedom. This is the beginning of flow. The truth of impermanence. If flow teaches us to move with life instead of against it, impermanence reminds us why this lesson is so important. At the heart of every human struggle lies the desire for things to remain fixed. We want the good moments to last forever, and the painful ones to vanish instantly. We hold on tightly to what feels secure, believing that permanence will give us comfort. Yet the reality, as the Buddha discovered, is that nothing in this world stays the same. The truth of impermanence is woven into every breath, every heartbeat, every season, every relationship. The story of the Zen master Myoan illustrates this beautifully. She ran a small tea house near a mountain temple. One day, a desperate merchant arrived, his cart broken, his goods scattered, his future seemingly destroyed. He cried that his life was over and his family would starve. Calmly, Myoan poured him tea and asked, "Is the water in this cup the same water that flowed in the river yesterday?" The merchant admitted it was not. The master smiled and said, "And yet you believe your life will remain unchanged forever." She pointed to the cherry blossoms falling outside the window. Those flowers were buds last month, petals today, and tomorrow they will return to the soil. Nothing remains the same, not even your loss. This story captures a truth that is as relevant now as it was hundreds of years ago. Consider how often you imagine your problems as permanent walls closing in on you. Maybe you fear losing a job, a relationship, or your health, and you believe the pain will define you forever. Yet when you look back at your own life, you will see a different story. The heartbreak that once felt unbearable softened over time. The failure that once humiliated you became a stepping stone to new opportunities. Even the moments of joy that seemed endless eventually shifted into new forms. Everything changes. That is the one constant. At first, this truth can feel frightening. If nothing lasts, how can we find security? How can we love deeply if we know loss is inevitable? How can we build a life when everything we build will eventually fade? The Buddha taught that true security does not come from clinging to permanence, but from understanding change itself. When you realize that all experiences rise and fall, you stop resisting what cannot be controlled. You begin to live with greater courage and tenderness, because you know that both pain and joy are temporary guests in the house of your life. Let us pause and reflect on a simple example. Think of the sky. Each day the sky holds storms, sunshine, clouds, and endless variations. Yet the storms never last forever. They pass. The sunshine never stays either. It too passes. The sky itself remains vast enough to contain all of it. Your life is the same. Experiences pass through you. You are not the storm. You are not even the sunshine. You are the vast awareness that holds it all. Modern life often tricks us into believing otherwise. Social media feeds, for instance, present polished moments of happiness that seem timeless. Couples, smiling friends, celebrating professionals, achieving success. When you scroll through, you might feel that your struggles are permanent while everyone else lives in joy. But these snapshots are illusions. Behind every smiling photo is a story of change, loss, and impermanence. The couple may face arguments tomorrow. The successful professional may fear losing their position. The joyful celebration will fade into memory. Realizing impermanence helps us see through the illusions that keep us trapped in comparison and envy. Impermanence is not meant to be a cold or depressing idea. It is in fact liberating. It means your deepest suffering will not last forever. It means your mistakes do not define you. It means that even when you feel stuck, life is quietly shifting beneath the surface. The soil is preparing for spring even in the heart of winter. The waves are already reshaping the shoreline even when the water seems still. This constant movement offers hope in the darkest moments. There is a powerful story from the Buddhist tradition about a woman named Kisa Gotami. She lost her young son to illness, and in her grief, she carried his body from house to house, begging for medicine to bring him back to life. Finally, she was sent to the Buddha. With compassion, he told her he could help, but only if she brought him a mustard seed from a household where no one had ever died. She searched every home and everywhere she went. People were willing to give her the seed, but each house had known loss. A father, a mother, a child, a friend. By the end of her search, Kisa realized she was not alone in her suffering. Death and loss were not cruel punishments singled out for her, but universal parts of life. In this realization, her grief softened into understanding. She laid her son to rest and became one of the Buddha's devoted students. This story speaks to us today as much as it did then. Loss is inevitable, but when we understand impermanence, we also understand that grief will evolve. Pain will not remain in its sharpest form forever. It shifts into memory, into compassion, into wisdom. Knowing this does not erase the sorrow, but it gives us the strength to live with it and to let it transform us. Impermanence also changes how we experience joy. When we forget that joy is temporary, we cling to it desperately, trying to freeze it in place. We take loved ones for granted, assuming they will always be there. We rush through good times without fully tasting them. But when we remember that joy too is impermanent, we savor it more deeply. We look into the eyes of a friend and truly see them. We linger in the laughter of a child, knowing the moment is precious because it will pass. Impermanence makes joy brighter by reminding us that it is a gift. To bring this teaching into daily practice, try this simple reflection. Think of something that worries you right now. It might be a bill, an argument, a deadline, or a lingering sadness. Now imagine yourself 1 year from today. Will this worry still feel as heavy? Most likely it will have shifted, softened, or even disappeared. Then think of something that brings you joy today. A meal, a song, a walk in the sunlight. Remind yourself that this joy too will pass, and let that reminder deepen your appreciation. By practicing this awareness, you begin to live with greater balance. You neither cling nor resist. You simply flow with the natural rhythm of change. Impermanence also has profound implications for identity. So many of us define ourselves by our past mistakes, old stories, or fixed labels. We say, I am always anxious, or I am not good at relationships, or I am a failure. But impermanence reveals that none of these identities are permanent. You are changing moment by moment. The person who began reading these words is not exactly the same as the person you are now. Cells have shifted, thoughts have changed, awareness has expanded. If everything in you is changing, how could you ever be trapped forever in one label? Understanding impermanence invites you to meet yourself with compassion. It reminds you that growth is always possible. Healing is always unfolding. No storm defines the sky, and no single moment defines your life. This perspective opens the door to resilience. You begin to trust that you can endure difficulties because you know they will not remain forever. You begin to approach opportunities with courage because you know even failure is not final. In the modern Western world, we often avoid talking about impermanence because it reminds us of mortality, yet avoiding it does not protect us. It only makes us fearful when change inevitably arrives. By facing impermanence directly, we remove its sting. We discover that death, endings, and transformations are not enemies but natural companions of life. This acceptance frees us to live more fully in the present. Imagine how different your life would feel if you fully embraced impermanence. Instead of rushing through your days, you would notice them. Instead of clinging to control, you would release it. Instead of fearing endings, you would recognize them as openings for new beginnings. Every moment would become richer because you would see it for what it truly is, a fleeting but precious gift. As you sit with these reflections, take a moment to notice something around you right now. It could be the sound of traffic outside your window, the warmth of a cup in your hand, or the quality of light in your room. Pay close attention. Notice how even in a few seconds it shifts. The sound fades, the warmth cools, the light moves. This simple exercise demonstrates impermanence in real time. Nothing remains the same, not even for a breath. The teaching of impermanence is not about detachment from life. It is about deeper engagement. When you know everything changes, you cherish what is here. You love more boldly, forgive more quickly, and live more fully. You stop postponing happiness until conditions are perfect. You realize that perfection will never arrive because everything is moving. The gift of impermanence is that you do not have to wait. You can begin to live now. As we continue on this journey, remember that impermanence is not your enemy. It is your teacher. It whispers to you in every falling leaf, every changing season, every shifting breath. It tells you that you are not stuck, that you are not broken forever, that your life is not a frozen picture. You are part of a living river that is always moving. When you embrace that movement, you find peace not in controlling life, but in dancing with its ever-changing rhythm. Emotions are not who you are. If impermanence teaches us that everything changes, then the natural next step is to apply this truth to our emotions. Few things feel more permanent than the rush of anger, the grip of sadness, or the weight of anxiety. In the heat of a difficult moment, an emotion can feel like an unshakable identity. You might say to yourself, "I am angry," or "I am broken," or "I am worthless." These words sound final, as though the emotion defines the whole of who you are. Yet Buddhist wisdom offers a different perspective. Emotions are visitors. They come, they stay for a while, and they leave. You are not the visitor. You are the home that holds them for a time. One of the most memorable Zen stories is about a young monk named Ejo. He struggled terribly with anger. Whenever someone criticized him or when things did not go his way, he would erupt. His rage would burn hot, leaving him ashamed once the fire died down. He felt trapped in a cycle of anger followed by guilt, convinced he would never escape. His teacher, the great master Dogen, watched this pattern repeat again and again. Finally, one autumn morning, after another outburst, Ejo stormed into the meditation hall. He confessed to his master that he was a failure destined to be controlled by his fury forever. Instead of scolding him, Dogen pointed to the fallen leaves around them. "Tell me," he asked, "are these the same leaves that were green on the trees just weeks ago?" Ejo looked at the golden leaves scattered on the ground and admitted they were not. Dogen continued, "And will they remain as they are forever?" Again, Ejo had to admit that the leaves would decompose and return to the soil. The master smiled and said, "If even the leaves cannot remain the same, how can your anger or your guilt remain forever? They too will rise, peak, and pass." This teaching transformed the way Ejo saw himself. He realized that his anger was not his identity. It was an experience, passing through him. The guilt that followed was also not permanent. What remained constant was his awareness, the space vast enough to hold every storm without being destroyed by it. You can apply this same lesson in your own life. Think about a time when anger gripped you. In the moment, it felt overwhelming, like a fire that might consume everything. Yet eventually, the intensity faded. Perhaps you were left with regret or calm or even relief, but the fire itself did not last. The same is true for sadness. When grief arrives, it can feel as though it will never leave. But even the sharpest pain softens into memory. Anxiety too rises and falls, sometimes strong in the morning, sometimes weaker at night, sometimes disappearing altogether for stretches of time. Each of these emotions is impermanent. None of them define you. Modern science supports what the Buddha taught centuries ago. Neuroscientists have observed that when an emotion arises in the brain and body, the raw chemical cycle of that feeling often lasts less than 2 minutes, unless we feed it with our thoughts. In other words, if anger arises and you do nothing but observe it, it peaks and fades naturally. But if you replay the story in your mind, rehearsing what was said and how wrong it felt, the anger renews itself again and again. This means that much of our suffering does not come from the emotion itself, but from the way we cling to it or resist it. Understanding this changes everything. The next time you feel an emotion rising, try shifting the way you describe it. Instead of saying, "I am angry," try saying, "There is anger in me right now." Instead of saying, "I am anxious," say, "Anxiety is visiting me." This small change creates distance. It reminds you that you are not the emotion. You are the one observing the emotion. The anger may be strong, but you are stronger because you are the space in which it appears. This perspective can be especially powerful when dealing with shame. Shame tells you that you are bad, not just that you did something wrong. It attaches itself to your sense of identity. But when you recognize that shame is also an impermanent visitor, you begin to see that it does not define your worth. Shame is a wave that rises and falls. It may leave you trembling, but it cannot erase the sky that holds it. Think of the ocean. Waves rise and crash, sometimes violently, sometimes gently. But beneath the surface, the ocean remains vast and stable. In the same way, your emotions are waves. They rise, they fall, they reshape, but the deeper part of you remains steady. You are not the wave. You are the ocean. To bring this into practice, you can try a simple exercise. The next time you feel a strong emotion, pause for a moment. Notice where it appears in your body. Is it heat in your chest, tightness in your stomach, or tension in your jaw? Breathe into that space and simply say to yourself, "This is what anger feels like. This is what sadness feels like." Notice that you are the one watching. You are not lost in the storm. You are the sky observing the weather. Even as the storm rages, you remain. This practice is not about suppressing emotions. Suppression only makes them stronger, hiding underground until they erupt. It is also not about indulging every emotion without restraint. The path is about awareness. When you see emotions clearly, you no longer confuse them with who you are. You learn to respond rather than react. Anger can transform into clarity. Sadness can open into compassion. Anxiety can sharpen into awareness of what matters. Each emotion, when observed without attachment, can become a teacher. Western culture often sends mixed messages about emotions. On one hand, we are encouraged to express everything loudly, to vent, to unleash. On the other hand, we are told to keep a stiff upper lip, to hide vulnerability, to be strong by never showing weakness. Both extremes can trap us. The wisdom of Buddhism offers a middle way. Emotions are not enemies to fight or masters to obey. They are signals, visitors, passing experiences. By meeting them with awareness, you honor them without being consumed by them. Consider how this might look in everyday life. Imagine you are in traffic. Someone cuts you off and anger rises instantly. Instead of yelling or slamming the horn, you take a breath and notice the heat in your body. You silently name it. Anger is here. Already you have created space. You may still feel irritated, but the space gives you a choice. You can let the wave pass instead of fueling it. Or imagine you receive a message that stirs jealousy. Rather than spiraling into comparison, you pause and notice jealousy has arrived. By naming it, you begin to loosen its grip. Over time, this practice reshapes how you see yourself. You stop believing that emotions define your identity. You are not permanently an anxious person, an angry person, or a sad person. You are a human being experiencing emotions that come and go. This realization brings freedom. It allows you to meet each moment freshly without being chained to old labels. There is a beautiful saying in Zen, "You are the sky. Everything else is just weather." When you truly understand this, you stop fearing the storms of your inner world. You know they will pass. You know they do not define you. And you know that, even in the middle of thunder, lightning, and rain, the vast sky remains untouched. Living with this awareness changes how you relate to others as well. When you see that your own emotions are impermanent, you begin to recognize the same truth in those around you. When someone lashes out in anger, you understand it is a passing storm, not the sum of their being. When a loved one is consumed by sadness, you remember it will not last forever. This perspective fosters compassion. Instead of reacting with judgment, you respond with patience. The practice of remembering that emotions are not you also prepares you for life's inevitable challenges. There will be times when grief, fear, or rage feel overwhelming, but if you can hold on to the truth of impermanence, you can survive even the darkest storms. You can remind yourself, this is not forever. This is a visitor. I am the space that holds it. In that space, resilience grows. Perhaps the most liberating aspect of this teaching is that it shows you do not have to fix yourself to be worthy of peace. You do not need to eliminate anger, erase sadness, or cure anxiety before you can rest. Peace does not come from never feeling emotions. Peace comes from recognizing that emotions are waves, and you are the ocean. Once you see this clearly, you can ride the waves instead of drowning in them. As you continue this journey, keep this image close to your heart. You are not the storm. You are not even the sunshine. You are the sky wide enough to hold it all. When you live from this awareness, emotions lose their power to define you. They become guides, signals, and teachers. They pass through and you remain vast, steady, and free. The illusion of a fixed self. When you begin to see that emotions are not who you are, another doorway opens. It leads to one of the deepest teachings of Buddhism, the truth of non-self. At first, this idea can sound unsettling. If I am not my emotions, then who am I? If I am not my thoughts, my roles, or my memories, what is left? The Buddha taught that much of our suffering comes from clinging to a rigid sense of identity, from believing in a permanent self that must be defended at all costs. When you look closely, you find that what you call self is not solid at all. It is a collection of changing experiences, roles, and stories that shift from moment to moment. Consider how you describe yourself. You may say, I am a parent, I am a teacher, I am a manager, I am a friend. These roles are important, but they are not permanent. Children grow up, jobs change, friendships evolve, and new roles emerge. You may also describe yourself with qualities. I am patient, I am anxious, I am strong, I am weak. But as we have seen, emotions and states of mind are impermanent. They rise and fall. You may feel strong today and fragile tomorrow. You may feel confident in one setting and uncertain in another. So, which one is the real you? The Buddha taught that the sense of self is like a story we tell ourselves. It is useful for navigating the world, but it is not the ultimate truth. Like an actor who wears different costumes on stage, we wear different identities depending on the situation. The danger comes when we mistake the costume for our essence. We cling to an image of who we think we are and suffer when life inevitably challenges that image. There is a story of a young woman named Sari who struggled with anger. She believed she was simply an angry person doomed to lash out forever. The Buddha asked her if she had been angry as a child every single moment. She admitted that she had not. He asked if she was angry while she was sleeping. Again, she said no. Slowly, she realized that her anger was not a permanent self. It was an experience that came and went. The same is true for every identity we cling to. None of them last. Think of your own life. How many identities have you already lived? Perhaps you were once a student, then a graduate, then an employee. Perhaps you were once carefree, then burdened with responsibility. At different times, you may have seen yourself as successful or failing, popular or lonely, joyful or depressed. Each phase felt like the truth of who you were, but each one shifted. The self is like a river, always moving, always changing. To cling to one version is to suffer when the river inevitably flows into something new. Modern culture often reinforces the illusion of a fixed self. Social media profiles ask you to define yourself in a few words or images. Job titles become shorthand for worth. Achievements or failures get branded onto your sense of identity. But these labels are only snapshots, frozen moments that do not capture the living reality of who you are. You are more than any role, more than any story. Understanding non-self does not mean you stop existing. It means you recognize that you are not trapped inside a single definition. You are larger than any label. You are the awareness that experiences roles, thoughts, and emotions but is not limited by them. This recognition brings freedom. When you are no longer chained to a fixed identity, you can move with greater ease through life's changes. Imagine for a moment that you see yourself only as a successful professional. You pour your energy into your career, believing that your worth depends on it. Then suddenly the company downsizes, and your role disappears. If you cling to the belief that you are nothing without your job, the loss feels like a death. But if you understand that yourself is not fixed, you can grieve the change while also seeing possibilities. You can discover new roles, new paths, new ways of expressing who you are. The same truth applies in relationships. If you define yourself solely as someone's partner and the relationship ends, you may feel shattered. But if you see yourself as larger than that role, you recognize that while the role has changed, your essence remains. The teaching of non-self also transforms how you relate to others. When you believe your identity is permanent, you are quick to judge others by their identities. You label someone as lazy, cruel, or selfish, and assume that is who they are forever. But when you realize that identities are fluid, you begin to see others with compassion. You recognize that just as you are not defined by your worst moment, neither are they. This perspective softens judgment and opens the door to forgiveness. There is also profound relief in realizing that you do not have to hold together a perfect identity. Many of us spend enormous energy trying to maintain an image of success, of competence, of strength. We hide our flaws, fearing they will expose us as failures. But when you understand non-self, you see that you are never a fixed identity to begin with. You are a living process, always becoming. This means you can let go of the exhausting task of being perfect. You can allow yourself to be human. To bring this teaching into practice, try writing down the roles and labels you currently carry. Perhaps you write parent, employee, friend, creative, anxious, strong, weak. Then reflect on each one. Has this always been true? Will it always be true? What happens when you loosen your grip on this label? You may find that some labels feel liberating, while others feel like chains. By seeing them clearly, you begin to release the belief that they define you permanently. Another practice is to notice the voice in your head that says, "I am." When you catch yourself thinking, "I am a failure" or "I am not good enough," pause. Ask yourself, is this absolutely true, or is this a passing state? Remember that your emotions and circumstances change constantly. If they change, then the story attached to them cannot be the whole of who you are. Modern psychology echoes this wisdom. Therapists often help clients reframe their identities, reminding them that depression, anxiety, or trauma are experiences, not definitions. You are not depression. You are a human experiencing depression. You are not trauma. You are a human carrying the effects of trauma. This shift from identity to experience opens space for healing. Understanding non-self also prepares you to live more fully in the present. When you cling to a fixed identity, you are often stuck in the past or anxious about the future. You replay old stories or worry about maintaining your image. But when you see that the self is not fixed, you can let go of the need to control how you are seen. You can meet each moment fresh without dragging the weight of a rigid identity behind you. Imagine how different life could feel if you were no longer imprisoned by who you think you must be. You could try new things without the fear of failure defining you. You could speak openly without worrying about protecting an image. You could allow yourself to grow, to change, to evolve, knowing that the self is not a prison but a river. At first, this teaching may feel disorienting. If there is no fixed self, where do we find stability? The Buddha's answer was that stability comes not from clinging to a permanent identity, but from recognizing the unchanging awareness that holds all experience. Identities come and go, roles change, emotions shift, but awareness remains. Like the sky that holds every weather pattern, awareness remains vast and steady. When you rest in awareness rather than in labels, you discover a deeper ground of being. This recognition is not abstract. You can taste it directly. The next time you are overwhelmed by a story about yourself, pause and breathe. Notice the story. Notice the feelings it brings. Then notice the one who is observing all of this. That awareness has been with you since childhood, through every role, every change, every storm. It has never been destroyed by any identity. That awareness is your true home. The gift of non-self is freedom. Freedom from the burden of perfection. Freedom from the prison of old labels. Freedom to grow, to change, to become. It allows you to meet yourself and others with compassion, to live with openness, and to release the endless struggle of defending an image. In this freedom, life becomes lighter. You can walk with greater ease, knowing that you are not trapped in any story. As we continue this journey, remember that non-self is not about erasing who you are. It is about expanding your vision of what you are. You are not a single role or identity. You are a living process, vast awareness flowing through experiences. When you rest in that truth, you find a stability deeper than any label could ever offer. You discover that you are free to live, to change, to love, to be, the balance of the middle way. Once you begin to see that the self is not fixed, and that emotions and roles do not define you permanently, another profound truth arises. It is the teaching of the middle way, one of the earliest and most central insights of the Buddha. The middle way is the art of balance. It is the wisdom of avoiding extremes. For centuries, people have searched for peace, either through indulgence or through denial. Some throw themselves into pleasure and distraction, hoping that comfort will quiet their pain. Others swing in the opposite direction, pushing themselves through extreme discipline or denial, believing that suffering is the path to liberation. Both paths lead to exhaustion. The Buddha discovered a different way, a way of dynamic balance that allows you to live with both purpose and ease. The story of how this insight arose is simple, yet unforgettable. Before his awakening, the Buddha practiced extreme asceticism. He starved his body, denied himself rest, and pushed himself to the brink of death, hoping that through suffering he would reach freedom. One day he heard a musician tuning a sitar. The teacher explained to his student that if the string was pulled too tight, it would snap. If it was left too loose, it would produce no sound. Only when it was tuned with just the right tension could it create harmony. In that moment, the Buddha realized that life was the same. Too much indulgence weakens the spirit. Too much denial breaks the body. True freedom arises when the strings of life are tuned in balance. This teaching remains as vital today as it was 2,000 years ago. In modern life, extremes are everywhere. On one side is the culture of overwork, the grind that celebrates long hours, constant productivity, and the belief that worth is measured by exhaustion. On the other side is the culture of avoidance, where people escape into endless entertainment, distraction, or numbing habits, hoping to avoid the discomfort of life. Both leave us empty. The middle way calls us back to balance, to a life where effort and rest, work and play, discipline and joy all find their rightful place. Think of your own daily rhythm. How often do you push yourself beyond what is healthy? Perhaps you stay up late working, convincing yourself that one more hour will make the difference. Perhaps you deny yourself rest because you believe it is laziness. Then exhaustion sets in and you swing to the opposite extreme, collapsing into days of distraction or indulgence. This cycle is familiar to many. The middle way offers an alternative. It invites you to listen to your body, to honor its need for effort and its need for rest. It reminds you that sustainability is more powerful than extremes. Balance does not mean mediocrity. It does not mean living without passion or commitment. It means recognizing that both extremes carry traps. The pursuit of constant pleasure dulls your capacity to experience true joy. The pursuit of constant suffering breaks your spirit. Balance means bringing awareness into every choice. Am I pushing too hard? Am I giving up too easily? Where is the harmony in this moment? Consider how this applies to relationships. Some people cling tightly, demanding constant reassurance and control. Others withdraw completely, avoiding vulnerability and intimacy. Neither extreme creates connection. The middle way is the balance of openness and boundaries, of giving and receiving, of speaking and listening. It is not about keeping score or living in fear. It is about tuning the strings of the relationship so that harmony can arise. The middle way also applies to how you relate to yourself. Many of us are trapped in cycles of harsh self-criticism on one side and unchecked indulgence on the other. We either attack ourselves for every mistake or let ourselves drift aimlessly without purpose. The middle way is self-compassion joined with responsibility. It is the willingness to be kind to yourself while also holding yourself accountable to what matters. It is the recognition that growth requires both effort and gentleness. In a world of constant extremes, balance can feel radical. Advertisements tell you to indulge more. Productivity culture tells you to grind harder. Social media amplifies the most dramatic voices, the most polarizing opinions, the most extreme examples. Balance rarely goes viral. Yet balance is what brings peace. The middle way reminds us that wisdom often lives in the quiet middle, not in the loud extremes. Let us bring this down to practice. The next time you face a decision, pause and ask yourself 2 questions. Am I pulling the string too tight? Am I leaving the string too loose? For example, if you are pursuing a goal, notice if you are driving yourself into exhaustion. That is too tight. Or notice if you are neglecting the goal entirely, lost in distraction. That is too loose. Then ask, what would harmony look like here? Maybe it means working with focus for a few hours, and then allowing yourself true rest. Maybe it means returning to the goal with steady steps, rather than abandoning it. This simple reflection can guide you toward balance in countless areas of life. The middle way is also a reminder that balance is not static. It is dynamic, like walking. When you walk, you are constantly shifting your weight from one foot to the other, always adjusting, always finding a new balance. Life is the same. Balance today may look different than balance tomorrow. What matters is the willingness to keep adjusting, to keep listening, to keep tuning the strings. Modern science again echoes this ancient wisdom. Studies on stress and performance show that a certain level of challenge sharpens focus and builds resilience. But too much stress leads to burnout, and too little challenge leads to boredom. The sweet spot is balance, where effort meets rest, where growth is possible without collapse. Athletes understand this well. Training must be balanced with recovery. Muscles grow not through constant strain, but through cycles of exertion and rest. The same principle applies to the mind and spirit. The middle way also changes how you approach spiritual practice. In the Buddha's time, some believed liberation could be found only through severe self-denial. Others sought it through indulgence in rituals and pleasures. The Buddha rejected both. He taught that meditation, mindfulness, and compassion must be practiced with balance. Too much striving in meditation leads to tension. Too much passivity leads to dullness. The practice becomes fruitful only when balanced, alert yet relaxed, focused yet open. Imagine applying this principle to your own search for peace. Instead of chasing perfection through rigid self-help routines or abandoning your growth altogether, you walk the middle path. You meditate not to achieve a performance but to meet yourself where you are. You rest not out of laziness but out of respect for your body. You work not to prove your worth, but to express your gifts. This is the harmony of the middle way. There is a profound relief in realizing that you do not need to live at the edges. You do not need to burn yourself out to succeed. You do not need to abandon responsibility to find joy. You can live in balance in the middle, in the place where effort meets ease. This balance allows you to stay steady in the face of change. Extremes collapse when circumstances shift. Balance bends, adjusts, and endures. Think again of the sitar. When the string is tuned with care, it produces music that can move the heart. Your life is like that string. Too tight, and it breaks. Too loose, and it falls silent. Just right, and it creates harmony. The middle way is not a compromise. It is not choosing half measures. It is tuning life to create music. As you continue on this journey, carry the image of the sitar with you. Ask yourself throughout the day, where am I too tight? Where am I too loose? What does balance look like now? The answers will change just as life changes, but the practice of asking, of tuning, will guide you back to harmony. The middle way does not promise a life free of difficulty. It promises a life where difficulty does not break you. It does not promise constant happiness. It promises a way to hold both joy and sorrow without collapsing into extremes. It promises resilience, peace, and the quiet strength of balance. As you reflect on this teaching, take a moment to notice your own life. Where are you living in extremes? Where are you overworking, overthinking, overcontrolling? Where are you avoiding, distracting, denying? Then imagine what it would feel like to tune the strings differently. Imagine the relief of balance, the harmony of the middle path. That is the gift the Buddha offered when he discovered the middle way. It is a gift that remains available to you now in every moment, in every choice. Emotions as waves. After exploring the wisdom of the middle way, it becomes clear that balance is not only needed in how we live, but also in how we relate to our inner world. Our emotions often feel like forces beyond our control, crashing into us with such intensity that we forget they are temporary. Yet when we learn to see emotions as waves rising and falling, building and dissolving, we discover a gentler way to live with them. Instead of fearing them or clinging to them, we allow them to flow. There is a story from the time of the Buddha about a woman named Patakara. She endured unimaginable tragedy, losing her husband, her children, and her parents in a series of heartbreaking events. Her grief was so deep that she wandered in despair, unable to function, convinced that life had abandoned her completely. When she came to the Buddha, he did not dismiss her sorrow. He did not tell her to simply move on or be strong. Instead, he listened with compassion and then spoke gently about the nature of life. He reminded her that just as rivers overflow and recede, so too do emotions. Her pain, though immense, was not permanent. It would change, soften, and transform. Through this understanding, Patakara eventually found peace and became one of the Buddha's devoted followers. Her story reveals a profound truth. Emotions, no matter how overwhelming, are not fixed. They are movements of energy within us, like waves in the ocean. Some are small ripples that pass quickly. Others are towering storms that shake us to our core. But no wave lasts forever. Even the most powerful crest eventually breaks and flows back into the sea. When we forget this, we either drown in our emotions or we fight them desperately, both of which only deepen our suffering. Think of your own experiences. Perhaps there was a moment when grief felt unbearable, when you believed you would never smile again. Yet slowly, day by day, the sharpness of that grief softened. Or recall a moment of joy that felt endless, like a perfect afternoon you wished could last forever. Yet it too passed, leaving behind a memory. Both joy and sorrow are waves. They rise, they peak, they fade. The challenge is that in the middle of an emotional storm, it is easy to believe it will never end. Anxiety can feel like a constant shadow, anger like a permanent flame, despair like an unending night. But when you remember the nature of waves, you begin to ride them differently. You no longer fight to hold them in place or push them away. You learn to surf, to move with them, to trust that they will change. Modern science confirms this ancient wisdom. Studies of emotional regulation show that feelings often follow predictable arcs. Anxiety rises, peaks, and then diminishes. Anger flares and then cools. Sadness deepens and then lifts. When we allow the cycle to unfold naturally, emotions lose much of their power to control us. The problem arises when we resist. When we cling to joy, we create suffering because we cannot keep it. When we resist pain, we create suffering because we cannot stop it. The key is to allow emotions to be waves, not prisons. One way to practice this is through mindful observation. The next time a strong emotion arises, pause and notice it. Instead of saying, "I am this emotion," try saying, "This emotion is visiting me." Then ask yourself, what is the shape of this wave? Does it feel like heat, pressure, heaviness, or energy? By describing the physical sensations, rather than being lost in the story, you begin to ride the wave instead of drowning in it. Another practice is to time your emotions. Notice how long an emotion truly lasts when you do not feed it with stories. You may be surprised to discover that what felt endless actually passes in minutes. Neuroscientists suggest that the raw physiological wave of an emotion often lasts less than 2 minutes, unless we prolong it by ruminating. This means that much of our suffering comes not from the emotion itself, but from the way we replay it in our minds. The middle way teaches us to avoid extremes, and this applies to emotions as well. One extreme is suppression. We try to push emotions down, hide them, pretend they are not there. This creates pressure that eventually erupts. The other extreme is indulgence. We pour ourselves into the emotion, fueling it, dramatizing it, letting it define us completely. Both paths keep us trapped. The middle way of emotions is awareness without attachment. We acknowledge the wave, we feel it, but we do not become it. Imagine standing on a beach watching the tide. You see waves rising and falling. You may even step into the water feeling the push and pull. But you know the ocean is vast, and no single wave defines it. In the same way, when anger arises, you acknowledge it, feel it, and let it pass. You do not pretend it is not there, nor do you let it control you. You watch it crest and break, trusting the cycle. This practice also brings compassion. When you recognize that your emotions are waves, you begin to see the same truth in others. The anger of a colleague, the sadness of a friend, the fear of a child, all are waves moving through them. This perspective helps you respond with patience instead of judgment. You no longer see people as fixed in their emotions. You see them as fellow travelers riding waves of their own. There is also a gift hidden in the painful waves. Grief, fear, and sadness, when acknowledged, can soften the heart. They remind us of our humanity, our vulnerability, our capacity to care. The waves of sorrow often leave behind the sand of compassion. Many people who have suffered deeply become gentler, more understanding, more present for others. This is because they have learned to ride the waves instead of denying them. Joy too becomes richer when seen as a wave. When you know it will not last forever, you savor it more deeply. You linger in the laughter, taste the food more fully, hold the embrace more tenderly. Instead of rushing through joy or taking it for granted, you cherish it because you know it is fleeting. Impermanence gives joy its sweetness. To live with emotions as waves is to live with greater freedom. You are no longer terrified of being swept away, nor are you desperate to freeze joy in place. You accept the rhythm of life, the ebb and flow, the rise and fall. This acceptance does not make you passive. It makes you resilient. You learn to stand in the ocean of life without fear, knowing that whatever wave comes, you can ride it. This wisdom is especially important in times of collective uncertainty. In recent years, the world has faced upheaval, from pandemics to political unrest to personal losses. Fear and grief have risen like storm waves across entire communities. In such times, it is easy to believe the storm will never end. But history reminds us that even the darkest nights give way to dawn. Even the fiercest storms calm. To remember that emotions are waves is to remember that change is always possible, even in the most difficult times. As you reflect on your own life, ask yourself, what wave am I riding right now? Is it a wave of stress, of sadness, of joy, of anticipation? Notice its shape, notice its rise, trust that it will fall. This simple act of noticing transforms the way you live with emotions. The Buddha once compared life to a river. Everything flows, everything changes, and to cling to any moment is to suffer. Emotions are part of that river. They are the currents, the swells, the ripples. When you learn to ride them, you discover that peace is not the absence of waves, but the ability to move with them. As we journey deeper into these teachings, remember this truth. You are not the wave. You are not the storm. You are the vast ocean capable of holding every rise and fall. When you live from this awareness, emotions lose their power to dominate you. They become teachers, guides, companions on the path. You walk through life with greater ease, knowing that every wave, no matter how fierce, will pass, and that the ocean of your being remains steady, open, and free. Modern applications of ancient wisdom. The beauty of Buddhist teachings is that they are not confined to temples, monasteries, or distant centuries. They are living truths that can be applied in the middle of modern life. You do not need to retreat to a mountain or live in silence for years to experience their power. In fact, the fast-paced and stressful world of today may be where these teachings are needed most. Flow impermanence, non-self, the middle way, and the wisdom of emotions as waves can all be practiced in everyday settings, whether in the office, on the street, or at home with your family. Think first about the rhythm of modern work. Many people in Europe, America, and Canada find themselves caught in cycles of overwork. Emails arrive late into the night. Phones vibrate constantly with messages and notifications. Meetings fill the calendar, leaving little time for reflection. The culture praises busyness as if constant motion proves worth. Yet this endless striving leads to burnout. Here, the teaching of flow becomes a practical guide. Instead of pushing against resistance all day, you can learn to recognize the spaces. You can notice when a project naturally opens, when a conversation is ready, when your mind is clear. Rather than cutting against bone, you learn to find the joints where effort slides more easily. A simple exercise is to pause before each task and ask, where is the space here? Sometimes the space is in shifting your focus, sometimes in asking for help, sometimes in waiting for the right moment. This practice saves energy and reduces stress, allowing you to work not harder but more harmoniously. Impermanence also speaks directly to modern life. In a culture where stability is prized, change often feels like a threat. Careers end unexpectedly, relationships shift, economies rise and fall. These changes can provoke anxiety when we cling to the belief that things should remain the same. But remembering impermanence allows you to meet change with more resilience. Instead of fearing it, you begin to expect it. You know that even the hardest circumstances will evolve, and even the best moments cannot be frozen. Consider the economic challenges that ripple across societies. People lose jobs, companies restructure, industries disappear. For someone who believes their identity is permanently tied to a single role, such loss can feel devastating. But for someone who understands impermanence, the loss, while painful, also opens the possibility of transformation. One chapter closes, and another begins. Impermanence does not erase grief, but it softens despair by reminding us that change is the very nature of life. The teaching of non-self also has powerful applications in our modern age of digital identity. Social media encourages us to curate images of ourselves, to polish and post only what we want others to see. This can create pressure to maintain a fixed identity, as if one mistake or one flaw would shatter the image we have built. But non-self reveals that identity is fluid. You are not defined by a profile, a label, or a single story. You are larger than any digital reflection. Remembering this frees you from the endless cycle of comparison. You can engage with others online without believing that likes or comments determine your value. In workplaces and schools, non-self encourages flexibility and growth. When you stop clinging to the story that you are permanently bad at math or always anxious in public speaking, you open the door to learning. Labels become less heavy. You recognize that you are a process, not a fixed point, and that growth is always possible. The middle way offers another antidote to modern extremes. The 21st century is filled with polarities. Work hard or escape into distraction. Embrace strict diets or overindulge. Push yourself relentlessly at the gym or avoid movement entirely. The middle way invites a different approach. Instead of swinging between extremes, you ask, what is balanced here? In diet, it may mean eating mindfully without rigid restrictions or reckless indulgence. In exercise, it may mean consistency over extremes, moving your body regularly without punishment. In lifestyle, it may mean valuing rest as much as productivity, remembering that sustainability is more powerful than intensity. This balance extends to how we consume information. News and social media often thrive on extremes, amplifying outrage and fear. The middle way reminds you not to drown in constant negativity, nor to avoid awareness entirely. You can stay informed while also protecting your mental health, choosing balance in what you read, how long you engage, and when you step away. The teaching that emotions are waves also has striking relevance today. Anxiety, depression, and stress are widespread challenges across the Western world. Many people believe these states define them permanently. They say, I am anxious or I am broken, and carry those labels like lifelong sentences. But when you see emotions as waves, you begin to loosen their grip. Anxiety is not you. It is a wave moving through you. Sadness is not you. It is a wave that rises and falls. Knowing this allows you to ride the waves instead of drowning. Mindfulness practices are a direct way to apply this wisdom. For example, when you feel overwhelmed, you can pause and notice your breath. You can label what you feel without judgment. This is fear. This is tension. This is sadness. The labeling itself creates distance, reminding you that the feeling is a visitor, not your essence. Over time, this practice builds resilience. You stop fearing emotions because you know they will pass. Science supports this. Research on mindfulness shows that simply naming emotions reduces their intensity. Brain scans reveal that when people identify what they feel, the amygdala, the part of the brain responsible for fear responses, becomes less active. In other words, acknowledging emotions helps them move through more quickly. This is riding the wave in real time. Buddhist wisdom also intersects with modern neuroscience in the concept of neuroplasticity. The brain is not fixed. It changes with experience, creating new pathways and habits. This scientific truth mirrors the teaching of impermanence and non-self. Just as nothing in life remains static, nothing in your brain remains unchangeable. This means that healing is always possible. Trauma does not lock you permanently into suffering. Anxiety does not trap you forever. With practice, the brain itself can reshape, opening new ways of living. The applications extend to community life as well. When societies forget impermanence, they cling to outdated systems or resist necessary change. When groups cling to fixed identities, conflict deepens. But when communities embrace impermanence and non-self, they become more adaptable, compassionate, and inclusive. They recognize that change is not a threat, but a chance for renewal. In education, these teachings remind teachers and students that failure is not a permanent identity, but a moment in a process. In healthcare, they remind patients and providers that illness is part of a larger cycle, and even when cure is not possible, transformation island. In politics, they remind leaders and citizens that extremes rarely sustain and balance is essential for long-term peace. Most importantly, these teachings return us to the personal level. They remind you that you do not need to escape your modern life to find peace. The wisdom of Buddhism is not about withdrawal from the world, but about engaging with it differently. You can practice flow while answering emails, impermanence while facing change, non-self while navigating identity, the middle way while making choices, and the awareness of emotions as waves while moving through daily challenges. Imagine applying all of this in one ordinary day. You wake up feeling anxious. Instead of identifying with it, you say, "Anxiety is here," and breathe, trusting it will pass. At work, you notice you are pushing too hard and you pause, asking where the space island. You shift your effort to where energy is already flowing instead of forcing. During a meeting, you remember that your role does not define your entire self, and you let go of the pressure to be perfect. Later, when you feel tempted to collapse into distraction, you recall the middle way and choose a balanced activity, perhaps a walk outside. When joy arrives during that walk, you savor it, knowing it is precious because it will pass. In each moment, the teachings live not as abstract philosophy, but as practical tools for freedom. This is how ancient wisdom meets modern life, not through grand gestures or impossible disciplines, but through simple awareness, steady practice, and compassionate presence. You do not need to renounce your life to walk this path. You only need to walk it with awareness. As we continue forward, carry this truth with you. The teachings of Buddhism are not relics of history. They are living guides, as relevant in the noise of the city as they were in the silence of ancient forests. They meet you where you are, in your work, your family, your struggles, and your joys. They remind you that peace is not hidden in some distant future. It is available here and now, in the choices you make, in the breaths you take, in the way you ride the waves of life. As we reach the end of this journey, the threads of the teachings weave together into a single fabric of truth. Life is movement. Nothing stays the same. To resist this movement is to suffer. To flow with it is to discover peace. The Buddha's wisdom does not remove the storms of existence. It teaches us how to meet them with steadiness, balance, and compassion. You have seen that flow is the art of moving with life rather than against it. You have seen that impermanence, though unsettling at first, becomes a source of freedom when you embrace it. You have seen that emotions are waves, powerful yet temporary, and that they do not define who you are. You have seen that the self is not a fixed identity, but an ever-changing process. You have seen that the middle way is harmony, the tuning of life's strings so that music arises instead of silence or breakage. And you have seen that these ancient truths are not abstract ideas, but living practices that can guide you through the challenges of the modern world. The great paradox of this wisdom is that nothing needs to change for everything to change. The world will still present difficulties. Relationships will still evolve. The body will still age. Emotions will still rise and fall. But when you carry these teachings in your heart, your relationship to life transforms. You no longer fear change because you know it is inevitable. You no longer cling to labels because you know they are illusions. You no longer drown in emotions because you know they are waves. You no longer exhaust yourself in extremes because you know balance brings strength. The truth revealed again and again is simple. Peace is not found in controlling life, but in learning to dance with it. Happiness is not something you chase, but something you allow. Freedom is not the absence of difficulty, but the presence of awareness. So as you step back into your daily life, remember the stories and lessons you have heard. Remember the butcher who found the spaces between. Remember the tea master who reminded the merchant that water never stays the same. Remember the young monk who learned that anger passes like autumn leaves. Remember the Buddha himself who discovered that the strings must be tuned not too tight, not too loose, but in balance. Let these stories echo in your own moments of struggle and choice. Above all, remember this: you are not the storm. You are not even the sunshine. You are the sky, vast and steady, holding it all. Life will keep changing. Emotions will keep moving. Identities will keep shifting. But within you is an awareness wide enough to embrace it all without fear. Carry that truth with you. Flow with life. Trust impermanence. Rest in the vastness of your awareness. And discover moment by moment the freedom that was always here waiting for you to notice.